Hey guys, what's up? It's Clay, and today is Star Wars Day, so happy Star Wars Day, everybody. I'm going to be doing a video on ranking the Star Wars villains. I kind of pulled these from the movies and the Clone Wars and Rebels. I didn't really go into like comic books and the expanded universe and all of that, so I just kind of, because then there'd be too many Sith and it would get, for me at least, confusing. So I just kind of stuck with the main stuff that we like see in the movies or TV shows. So I think there's about 20 of these roughly. So we'll start with number 20, which is Grand Moff Tarkin. Now I put him at 20 because throughout the movie of A New Hope, because that's really the only movie we get to see him in other than like Rogue One, and I think he appears in Clone Wars at some point. But in A New Hope, he pretty much is the main villain other than like Darth Vader. So he's the one that orders for Alderaan to be blown up, and he's the one that, you know, in Rogue One kind of pushes Director Krennic to destroy Jedha. And so he really is like an evil guy, but because he's not a Sith, he doesn't have the Force, he's really just a normal guy. That's why he's at number 20 and not somewhere else. But I did want to put him on this list because he is like the main villain of A New Hope. So number 19, we have the bounty hunter who did not shoot first in Greedo. Now I put Greedo at 19 because, again, we don't get to see much of him because he does die fairly quickly in A New Hope, and really all we get to see is the scene between him and Han. And he's, I mean, based on their conversation, we can tell that he's out to get Han. Like, I know that's what he gets paid for, but he truly, like, wants to just kill Han Solo. And so, in my mind, that makes him, like, a bad guy. And if he was that evil, like, I think he should be on this list. So, and the fact that I kind of like Greedo a little bit. So, that's why he's on this list. Number 18, I have Jabba the Hutt, and I put him on this list, and you might be saying, well, he's not really like a bad guy, but I mean, he is, because he does, you know, he takes Han Solo after he was trapped in carbonite. His whole, like, mission throughout the original trilogy was to get Han because Han owed him money or whatever. And so he was tracking down Han, and that's the whole reason, like, Boba Fett was with Darth Vader in Empire, and then, you know, why Boba Fett brings Han to Jabba, because he was working for Jabba. And Jabba is a gangster, or like you know, the leader of a lot of stuff on Tatooine. And so he's like an evil guy, and he does capture like most of them, and he tries to kill all of the main characters. You know, he tries to kill Luke in the Sarlacc pit, he tries to kill Han, he tries to, like, he keeps Leia as his slave or whatever, prisoner, whatever we call it now. He has R2 and 3PO working for him, you know, so he's overall like a bad guy. And even in Phantom Menace, and Captain Panaka says, like, we can't take the Queen to Tatooine because it's ruled by the Hutts, and the Hutts are gangsters and they would kill her and stuff. That helps prove that, like, they don't care who you are. You know, if you cross them, they'll kill you. So Jabba the Hutt really is a bad guy. And so my next number, I think it's 17, we have the battle droids, and I'm gonna classify this as just like the battle droids in general. So you have like the droidekas, the battle droids, the super battle droids, and anything else that falls, into any variation of battle droids or super battle droids or whatever. And I'm gonna put them here because sure, they didn't really, like, they were controlled by someone else the entire time, but at the same time it was the army that the separatists used in the prequel trilogy, and so like without the droids none of that would have happened. So yes, they may have been controlled by someone else, but they were also a very strong army, and we do know they do kill a lot of Jedi. We see that in the Battle of Geonosis. I mean, that was Geonosians and droids, but still. And we see it, that's what the Clone Wars is based on. You have the clones versus the droids, and so they are, like, they themselves aren't evil, but they are working for evil people, and so that's why they're on this list. And because they cause so much havoc throughout the galaxy in these movies that they're in, that's why they're number 17 on this list. Number 16, we have another bounty hunter, is Jango Fett, and he, everybody knows he dies in Attack of the Clones, so really we didn't get to see much of him, but the fact that he was used for the creation of the clone army, and it's his DNA that are in the clone troopers, is what I think helps put him on this list. That and the fact that he was working with Dooku and the separatists, and he, like, because of him the clones were created in a way, and so that's another big thing. Like, if they didn't have the clones, they couldn't have fought against the droids, which would make him a good guy, but at the same time he's a bad guy because of what happens later on down the road with the clones when they turn on the Jedi and then become stormtroopers and stuff. So Jango Fett, for what we get to see of him, where he hires Zam Wesell to kill Senator Amidala in Attack of the Clones, and then he ends up trying to fight against like Mace Windu in the Battle of Geonosis, and so he's one of the main bad guys in Attack of the Clones, other than Count Dooku and like the Geonosians and the Separatists. So he is a main guy, and that scene where he's flying, shooting against Obi-Wan, and he fights against Obi-Wan, he proves he can hold his own against Jedi. So that's why he's number 16 on this list. Number 15, we have his clones, or the stormtroopers, whatever you want to call them now. But I put them here because when they were clones, they were good until Order 66 occurred. We know that, and then they turned on their Jedi general. They turned on on the Republic, and then they became stormtroopers later on after they ran out of Jango Fett's DNA, and so when they started recruiting like just regular people to be stormtroopers. But I mean, they were what the Empire used as their army throughout the entire saga, pretty much. And even in Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and Rogue One, we see stormtroopers, just different variations of them. And so that shows you that like these are like the prominent people, and they don't get just anybody to be like a stormtrooper. You have to go through training and all that. And so they are like powerful people, and yeah, they do work for a higher power, just like the droids did, but they are still the army of the Empire. And so without them, the Empire wouldn't have control as it did. And so that's why I think the clones should be on this list, or stormtroopers should be on this list, and that's why they're number 15. Number 14, we have General Grievous. Now, yes, he's good in combat, but because he doesn't have the Force and he's not like a Jedi or a Sith, and he's just kind of like a lightsaber wielder, that's why I put him at 14 and not somewhere else. But I think that General Grievous does deserve a spot on this list because he is, at least in Revenge of the Sith and somewhat in the Clone Wars, he's like the main leader of the droid army when Count Dooku's either not there or he's gone or whatever. So, and we know that he was trained in the Jedi arts by Count Dooku, so we know he can fight. He holds his own for a little bit against Obi-Wan, and we see him, fight against other people in the Clone Wars. And so he is a good fighter. Number 13, we go to the Clone Wars series, and we have Mother Talzin. Now, for those of you that don't know, she is like the ruler of the Night Sisters, or the ones that created Darth Maul. Well, didn't like create him, but gave him like his strength and made him who he was, made him powerful. And the same with Savage Opress and Asajj Ventress. And the Night Sisters were powerful, and they use magic, and so that's what Mother Talzin does. We know she's like recruited by Count Dooku to give Palpatine an apprentice, and that's where Darth Maul comes in. And then in the Clone Wars, we get Darth Maul, and then we get Savage Opress. They have Asajj Ventress, who is Dooku's apprentice. And so the fact that she can use her magic to make these people stronger, and we know she can hold her own with the magic, because I think she ends up fighting against Palpatine or Dooku or somebody in the Clone Wars. I can't really remember, it's been a while since I watched it. But she does like fight against them until she gets killed. But she uses magic, and the fact that like she is a main target after Order 66, or after like closer to the end of the Clone Wars, should tell you how powerful she really is, because Palpatine needs her dead so that she can't stand in his way and make more warriors that could fight against him instead of for him, like Darth Maul ends up doing when he turns on Palpatine and then fights against him, and then whatever he does in Rebels. But she uses magic, and she is very powerful, and that's why she's the leader of the Night Sisters. She does deserve her spot on this list. Now, number 12 is the first ever female stormtrooper that we know of, Captain Phasma. And again, just like kind of like some of the people before her, she's not really like, a Force user or anything, because she is a stormtrooper, but she is a powerful stormtrooper. We've seen her fight against Finn, and we've seen her like, the stuff she can do and the different weapons she has, and she is the leader of the First Order stormtroopers, at least, or one of the leaders, because she is the captain. And so she is a powerful warrior, but again, just like Grievous, she doesn't, she's not really the Force or anything, but she is one of the main antagonists of the new series of movies. And so I think she does deserve this spot on this list, because she is one of these main like villains that they think of. Like when they talk about villains in this movie, you got Snoke, Hux, Kylo Ren, and Captain Phasma. So because she is one of those main villains in this series, that's why she's on this list. Number 11 is, I mentioned this person earlier, it's Asajj Ventress, who, if you've never seen the Clone Wars, she does end up becoming Count Dooku's apprentice. And then she ends up, eventually she'll fight against Obi-Wan. She'll fight against Anakin, I think. She fights against some other Jedi, you know, and she does become a main plot of the Clone Wars as like one of the bad guys. But I think in the end, I don't remember if she turns like somewhat good. I don't really remember what happens to her in the Clone Wars, but she is a main part of like the bad guys in the Clone Wars. Number 10, we go to Star Wars Rebels, and we have the Inquisitor, who in the series introduces a double-bladed lightsaber that spins, which is kind of cool, and he is like the main person that Ezra and Kanan like fight against after they, you know, reveal that they're Jedi and stuff. So the Inquisitor is like the main guy that's hunting down any remaining Jedi, and that's what the point of the Inquisitor is. And so he's like the main villain of at least maybe the first season of Rebels. I haven't watched all of Rebels, so I don't really know how far he gets. But at least from what I've seen, he is a formidable opponent for Kanan and Ezra until they end up defeating him at some point. But then we'll move on to number 9, and it's everybody's favorite bounty hunter, the son of Jango Fett, Boba Fett. And you can't have a list of villains in Star Wars without talking about Boba Fett. We've all seen Empire, we've all seen A New Hope and Return of the Jedi. We know what he does. We've seen him in the Clone Wars a little bit still as a kid, but you know, we know that he is the main bounty hunter that is tracking down Han Solo and Leia and Luke and all them throughout the entire series. He's the one that allows Han Solo to be taken back to Jabba. He takes him back to Jabba the Hutt, and then he's working for Jabba the Hutt. And if the rumors about the fact that stormtroopers don't usually burn their enemies is true, then the fact that Beru and Owen Lars were burned instead of just like shot would, and many people think it was Boba Fett. And so if that's true, then that right there goes to prove even more as to the fact that he is like, he doesn't care. He's just gonna do, you know, whatever he wants. If it was Boba Fett, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it isn't, but I don't know for sure. I think it would be a unique story if they had it tie in where Boba Fett was responsible for the death of Luke's aunt and uncle, which drove him to join the rebellion against the Empire, and so that pretty much set into play the events of A New Hope. Number 8, we have Savage Opress, and in the Clone Wars, this guy is like, he's not a bad guy in the sense that he works for the bad guys, because when he's made, yeah, at first he might start working for Dooku and, you know, going around killing off Jedi and stuff, but then eventually once he gets with Darth Maul, they're still bad guys and they still want to kill off the Jedi, but they're not doing it for someone else, they're doing it for themselves at this point. And so his strength alone makes him like hard to beat, because he was made the same as Darth Maul, you know, from Mother Talzin and the Night Sisters with their magic. He was made more powerful, and he was like a trained fighter, so he knows how to fight people. He's strong. He's just like overall hard to defeat. Number 7 is his brother from Dathomir, which is Darth Maul. And again, in Phantom Menace, we don't really get to see much of him, but the fact that he's able to take on both Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon at the same time, I mean, other than the fact that he has a double-sided lightsaber, but he's also responsible for the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, and then we see him again in the Clone Wars, where he comes back and wreaks havoc throughout the galaxy with his brother Savage Opress. And Maul is actually a Sith, and he was made the apprentice of Darth Sidious in the Phantom Menace, and he was used to hunt down, you know, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. The fact that he was second in command to Palpatine should tell you a lot about what Palpatine thought about Darth Maul. Now, number 6 is somebody that we don't really see in the movies or Clone Wars or Rebels or Rogue One or Solo, but we do hear about him, which is why I put him on this list, and that's Palpatine's former master, supposed former master, in Darth Plagueis. Now, Darth Plagueis is on this list because he is very powerful. We know that he can manipulate midi-chlorians to create and destroy life, and that's why many people think that he did that with Anakin. He created Anakin Skywalker, but at the same time, people are like, well, he would have been dead before Anakin would have been born or whatever, and so they think maybe because he taught his apprentice everything he knows, maybe it was Palpatine that created Anakin, because if Palpatine was truly his apprentice, then, and he did teach him everything he knows, then he would teach him how to manipulate life like that. But apart from that, he was also very wise and powerful. There's a reason they call him Darth Plagueis the Wise. He was a very intelligent Sith, and he was very powerful with the Force. The fact that we don't get to see him at all in this series is kind of a bummer, because I would have liked to have seen, like, even in like a flashback or a scene where it was like, you know, it showed him in his prime or something, or just show us something of him so that we can see, you know, how he was in battle and what he actually did. But because we couldn't, that's why I didn't put him closer to number 1, and that's why he's at number 6 instead of at like 1 or 2. Because yes, he's powerful, but we don't get to see that power. Number 5 is Count Dooku. Throughout the, at least Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and throughout the Clone Wars series, he is the main bad guy. And we know he started off as a Jedi, but he left the Jedi Order because they wouldn't believe him on certain matters. And he becomes a Sith so that he can try and rule the galaxy. And Palpatine is his master, but at the same time, Dooku kind of wants to fight for himself, and we know he's powerful. I mean, he fights against Obi-Wan, he fights against Anakin, he fights against Obi-Wan and Anakin twice, and he injures Obi-Wan both times. He fights against them separately in the Clone Wars. He fights against Yoda. I think he fights against them in the Clone Wars, but definitely in Attack of the Clones he fights Yoda and holds his own. And he has Force lightning, you know, like most Siths do. So he is very powerful, and he's a lot more wise than people give him credit for. He did know that the Senate was being controlled by the Sith Lord, and that's why he left the Jedi Order in the first place, because he didn't feel like they were allowing him to use his full potential. And yeah, I mean, we did get to see a lot of him, so we did get to see what all he could do, and he was a good warrior apart from being smart. Number 4, we go to The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, and we have Supreme Leader Snoke. And we know we don't get to see much of him in The Force Awakens, but in The Last Jedi, he's the main, other than like Kylo Ren, he's the main villain up until Kylo Ren kills him in The Last Jedi, and we don't know Like, at least me personally, I don't know if he's actually dead. I don't know if he was ever there to begin with. Like, I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know what they're gonna do in The Rise of Skywalker, which is episode 9, because they did have Palpatine's laugh. So if we have some way where he was connected to Palpatine this whole time, you know, and or if Palpatine has no relation to him and Palpatine's just surviving now, but whatever. But Snoke was like the supreme leader of the First Order. He was the leader, and we did get to see him fight. So he is Force sensitive. He uses the Force. You know, he's powerful against Rey in The Last Jedi. And so that's why he's at number 4. Number 3 is his apprentice, Kylo Ren. And in this new series of movies, we do get to see Kylo Ren kind of progress. And he starts off kind of like, yeah, he's powerful. I mean, he stops a blast from a blaster in midair and just holds it there. And we know Kylo Ren is powerful, and Snoke even like says it's time to complete your training, you know. And Kylo Ren kills Han Solo. He kills his own father. We see flashbacks of him in The Last Jedi, where he burns down the Jedi Temple and becomes the leader of the Knights of Ren. And so, like, we know what he's capable of doing. But Kylo Ren is a very strong warrior. He knows the Force. He's strong with the Force. And we see this throughout the series. Number 2, we have Emperor Palpatine. And I put him at number 2 because my last 2, I had a struggle kind of trying to place them. But if Palpatine is still alive, I think he would be at number 1. So I put him at number 2 because, yeah, he did rule the galaxy for like 30-something years or whatever, between the end of Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Return of the Jedi, until he died. He was the main ruler. Like, he spread fear throughout the galaxy. Everybody was scared of the Emperor. And then on top of that, he was very powerful with the dark side of the Force. We see this when he fights against the Jedi in Revenge of the Sith, when they come into his office, and he holds his own against 4 Jedi Masters. Not just 1, 4. He kills 3 of them, and then fights one-on-one with Mace Windu until Anakin comes in. I mean, he not only that, he manipulates the Senate to giving him, like, everything he needs to pretty much fulfill his plan of ruling the galaxy. And so he's very manipulative. He's a very good warrior. He's very strong with the dark side of the Force. We know he has Force lightning. We know he can, he even holds his own against Yoda and kind of defeats Yoda. And Yoda's the Grand Master of the Jedi Council. So that right there should tell you how powerful Palpatine actually is. And the reason he's not at number 1 is because number 1 is Darth Vader. And I'm kind of counting like Anakin as Vader too from Revenge of the Sith. Not just Vader from A New Hope through Return of the Jedi and Rogue One. So, I mean, we know the story of Anakin. We know how powerful Anakin was as a Jedi. And then once he learns to use the dark side and he gets corrupted to use that to try and save Padme, which doesn't happen anyways. But the fact that he is like Palpatine's go-to guy for going and wiping out somebody that he needed gone. He sends him to wipe out the Separatists in Revenge of the Sith. We see in Rebels when he's tracking people down. We see it in A New Hope, Empire, and Return of the Jedi when he goes and fights against, he gets to Bespin before Luke and them so that he talks with Lando, and then he captures Han and he fights against Luke. And So we know Vader is powerful, and on top of that, he is my favorite Star Wars character ever. I mean, he is just awesome. So that's part of why I put him at number 1. But like I said before, if Palpatine does stay alive, and he is alive for The Rise of Skywalker, then I think those two would swap, because that's something Vader couldn't do. But the fact that Vader went evil and then was able to come back to the light to become a Force ghost, and he was that strong with the Force, should also show you that, or how strong he actually is, because you don't see like Palpatine becoming a Force ghost, but that's because he was always a Sith. But the fact that Anakin starts good, goes bad, and then goes back to the light, and then can become a Force ghost after all that, should show you how powerful he truly is when he comes back to the light, even though he's dead when he does it. So that was my list of top 20, ranking the top 20 villains of the Star Wars movies and TV shows. Like I said, I didn't want to get into the expanded universe, because for me, you would have people like Darth Talon, Darth Krayt, Darth Bane, and it would just, it would get a lot of, it might not have been confusing, but it would have this list would have mostly just been Siths, and I wanted to have more than just Siths on this list. And so that's why I decided to just stick with like the main canon that we have with the movies, and then Rebels and Clone Wars. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and happy Star Wars Day again. Please like this video, comment on if you think my ranking of each person, if each person deserves to be where they are on the list, if you think they should be higher or lower. And let me know your thoughts on this video, and let me know what you think looking forward to for The Rise of Skywalker. And I'll see you guys next time. May the Force be with you. Goodbye.